Why don't we pray in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we give you thanks as we celebrate, I believe today is the Queenship of Mary, today's memorial. We ask that you bless us as we are here at Mary, Queen of Angels, and bless us as we gather together, that we may continue to open our hearts to you and to each other, through Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen. Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. We've done this so many times over the last year or so. I always feel badly like we don't need to introduce this, and yet I'm going to introduce it anyway. So we'll do our updates, myself and Jason, and then open the floor for questions. So we are ending our second summer together after the beginning of Partners in the Gospel and the beginning of our parish family. And boy, howdy, there seems like there's all sorts of things that are going on as we gear up. So this summer has been a summer, unlike last summer where it felt like we were sort of, all right, let's get everything as arranged as quickly as we can shortly after we arrived, and then let's change all those things because, oh dear God, it didn't work out the way we were hoping it would work or whatnot. This summer has been a little more of, okay, we've been here for a year, we have a better idea of where we want to go, we have a better idea of how things will or won't work, and really trying to firm things up. I had 3 priorities going into this summer. The first thing was not actually local to us here, but it was the capital campaign in St. Mary Star of the Sea in Port Townsend. As you guys know, their roof failed shortly around the time I got, or even a little before. We replaced the roof. It took a long time to get the arrangements made, but we replaced the roof right before or during the winter time to the tune of about $600,000. And we are launching a capital campaign in October. So we have managed to get a bare minimum of volunteers. We are working through OSV, Our Sunday Visitor, a nonprofit. So they don't take a commission, they don't take a percentage, they just have a flat fee, but they're doing all of our publications, all of our communication work, and we're launching that in October in the effort to raise up to, at least, with hope $600,000, but even more, but at least a good faith effort as best we can. So that's priority number 1. Priority number 2 is our Parish Family Advisory Council, and I know Jason, when he does his check-in, will probably have updates to give about the Chancery viewpoint, or the Archdiocese viewpoint. Parish Family Advisory Council, or the nickname that I'm not real enthusiastic, the PFAC, is our sort of super council across all of our parish family with representatives from each of our parishes. And going into the summertime, we didn't yet have representation from everybody, so a big effort of this summer has been trying to find key people from each parish with an idea of 2 per parish, and where there are bilingual communities, bilingual representation, so 1 English and 1 Spanish. That's been mostly successful. 2 of my parishes are still pending a couple of things, but we're going to have our first meeting in the middle of next month. We're going to have our first meeting in person, and the Parish Family Advisory Council, currently, the diocese has set as their objective to lead the questions of us in as parishes, pondering the question of who we are. Who are we as a parish? So what does it mean to be a Queen of Angels parishioner? What are the things that really define us? What are the things that we really care about? What are the things that are historically worth making sure are known and preserved? Same with St. Anne's and St. Thomas, same with St. Joseph, same with St. Mary's. And the Parish Family Advisory Council's first charge is to lead listening sessions at each parish. And so to have one at Queen of Angels that is only for Queen of Angels parishioners to answer that question, to talk among themselves, to kind of help formulate that. Same with St. Anne's, same with St. Joseph, same with St. Mary's. And the Parish Family Advisory Council will collate all of that. We will be publishing the results of all of these, so we really want to be transparent about what people are saying and how they're feeling and what comes up. But then to take the answers to that and go, okay, how do we distill that into the things that are most important about each community? And then go, all right, who do we want to become, which is sort of the next question in that. And have another listening session. Okay, these are the things we came up with, who we are. Who do we want to become as one parish family that isn't losing individual identity, but also what does it mean to be one giant parish family, or eventually one canonical parish? And then the last question is, how do we get there? What steps do we need to take? What things are lacking? What things are struggling? What things are going well? And that's the remainder of sort of the 2 years that remain in the process. I know there are nuances, and happy to have you add to that in a moment. The last question the Parish Family Advisory Council will spearhead with the community's input will be, what is our new name as well? And that sort of marks the ending of sort of that process. Not that we're going to be done growing together as a parish family or as one canonical parish, but that sort of ends that. And the Parish Family Advisory Council will ultimately, whether the same members stay on or new membership comes in, they will become the parish council of the new canonical parish. And so we will have that, I use the word super council as sort of shorthand. They will be the council that sort of advises me in major decisions across the whole parish family. And our local councils will merge, so every parish is required to have a pastoral council and a finance council. And my current framework, my current plan, which is not set in stone, is that we would still have some sort of local council that is an amalgamation of the membership of the two, the pastoral council and finance council, but only for regions. So for the Forks, Clallam Bay area, for the Port Angeles, Sequim area, and for the Port Townsend, Jefferson County area, and have one council each that meets locally, because the stuff that happens in Forks is not necessarily stuff that Port Townsend can talk about. The stuff that happens in Sequim isn't stuff that necessarily the Forks people can talk about. So to have local councils that then report to the super council and back and forth. And so we will still have local councils and a super council. And so that was my second priority, having the Parish Family Advisory Council be formed. I had set as my third priority bolstering our parish councils, and quickly had to abandon that about 3 weeks in, because I realized that we were in a bit of a crisis, particularly here at Queen of Angels, with our faith formation programs. We have been struggling, realizing that our First Holy Communion and our confirmation programs were not really on firm foundations. They weren't really going to launch without serious attention and time. And you guys heard about that last weekend at Masses. Our First Holy Communion has several really strong volunteers, and several more have stepped up since last weekend. And we're on track to have a pretty good First Holy Communion program. Though this weekend, Donna Weiss is going to be speaking to all of you, and maybe you aren't the ones who volunteer, but if you know somebody, please elbow them during or after the Mass, because we could use some more volunteers. Our confirmation program is on much shakier ground at this point. Unless something miraculous happens in the next week, we're looking at merging our confirmation for this year only. I'm not making any permanent plans, but this year we would have confirmation over at Sequim, because they have a solid program with lots of volunteers. And so we can use this year sending our kids there so they can get confirmation prep, but use the year to really build up a program here, and then hopefully have our own independent program. Primarily, not because we need to be independent, but primarily because having people in Port Angeles drive their kids after school over to Sequim, that can be a real hardship. But we're just at a position right now where we don't have what we need there. So that's been sort of the summer for us here across the region. We've had vacations, we've had different things happen. We had priest days, we had ordinations, we had different things happening, on and off. But that's been sort of the last few months, or last couple months of summertime at the parish in the area. So that's sort of my update on that front. How would you like to talk about Archdiocesan Chancery level things, updates? You guys know Jason, by the way, right? Jason, our parent.
I've been here for a few of these now. This is the third one, maybe. Anyhow, much the same that Father was talking about, especially when it comes to the PFACs. Most of the parish families either have formed and they're already meeting, or they have formed and they're going to start meeting here shortly. So Father's plans are pretty much in line with everyone else at this point. Like I said, there's a handful that are maybe a little bit ahead that the guys already be meeting, but there's actually a lot that their target first meet has been either this month or September for that council. So everybody's putting these, as you mentioned, super councils together essentially for their individual parish families. With that said, the work that they're going to do is what's going to be starting here in the fall. So, as you mentioned, there's listening sessions. So that's the listening sessions are going to be typically around opportunities and challenges. Right before that, most of the places are doing just a survey when it comes to what are our gifts. So the Who Are We is comprised of two different segments. What are our gifts, which is the individual parishes talking about. What gifts do these parishes bring to the whole, to the parish family? And then after that, everything that comes after that, this is that what are gifts is the only one where you can choose to just do a survey or choose to do like a town hall, like this type of a format. And it doesn't have to be a formal synodal listening session. Going forward, so starting with opportunities and challenges, which most people are targeting that sometime in the fall. So again, you're right in line. If you have that listening session for opportunities and challenges before Advent, you're probably actually right in line with 70%.
I'd like that a lot. We'll see.
Right. So you're probably in line with like 70%. So you're not as far behind as you might think you are. So, but there's some that are waiting until after Advent too. So just because circumstances say that, all these things that you might see on the website when it comes to partners and some of the timelines you see, pretty squishy. So they know in a lot of families there are challenges. Like this, one of the easy challenges to look at and see is just looking at a map, right? And seeing where everybody's located, where all these different parishes are located. That's a challenge, 1, 2, and 3 probably here for this parish family. And so because of those kind of things, we know that some of the things are not going to happen on the timeline that it is stated on the website. But anyone can look at it. There is a Partners in the Gospel part of the website. So in fact, if
you mean the Archdiocese website, just to clarify?
Oh yes.
Not our parish website, the Archdiocese website.
Yes.
Thank you.
And also the other big news is they rebranded. That was I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure you've seen those emails. But so the diocese now has a new logo and everything, so it renders all of my gear obsolete now. But they have this new red symbol here for the new archdiocese. They're not using the crest, their coat of arms anymore. And so the new color scheme also looks like it's red and blue. But if you just scroll down a little bit on the page, there's Partners in the Gospel there. So anyone can look at it. It's one of the first things on the site. Feel free to go through there, look at it. There's, some videos there by Father Gary Lazzaroni, who's our Vicar General. So he speaks, I think he usually posts a new video. I don't know if it's monthly, but at least quarterly he posts a new
He does a
video.
newsletter too. If you go to the bottom, the more detailed version,
Yes.
if you click on the box that says 4 parishes, it's meant to be for the leadership, but it really is open to anybody. Right. It goes into great detail. If you want to know all the timelines and all the details, you could have as much or as little reading as you want to have, because that section is really a lot of breakdowns.
Exactly. So, really, your parish family is right in line with pretty much most everybody else. At least, I would say, not where I would ever be alarmed with your progress. You're actually doing all right.
Nice to hear.
So, overall, I think that it seems like the feel, at least in this parish family, when you've visited, right? I was over in Forks last month, and here, Squim and Port Townsend, that. I think everybody's pretty happy with the way things are for the most part here. So there isn't really any concerns that I could pinpoint at all that, or nothing's been brought to me from anyone else either. So I think,
Let's wait till after the meeting to see if
right.
it's still true.
Right. So, overall, I think everything's going well in this parish family. A lot better than a lot of some of the other places. I won't say a lot, but some of the other places are struggling. But here, I think things are doing real well.
Well, that's the update portion.
Can I ask a question?
I was going to say, this is the section now where you can pretty much ask anything you want, and we'll do our best to answer, or kick the football down the road if we need to do research. So,
okay. I didn't catch that term that you used for the umbrella thing, but
Parish Family Advisory Council.
No, when there's going to be a name.
Naming our parish?
Does that mean the 5 individual names are going away?
Thank you for asking that. That has been a concern that was brought up even before we launched this. Please forgive me for what is a little bit perhaps repetitive for those of you who know it, but it's a helpful catechetical thing. And even if you guys know it, someone who's listening on the recording might not. When churches are consecrated, which involves the bishop coming and using holy oil, and 12 anointings for each of the apostles, anointings in a church. Every church is anointed under the patronage of whatever the name of the church is. Churches are anointed, and churches are consecrated under the name of a saint, and the church itself cannot be changed. Rome has actually ruled on this. I believe I'm sure we weren't alone, we asked, because there was some thought of it would be simpler if it was just one name. And Rome was like, no, that church was consecrated under the patronage of Queen of Angels, or St. Anne, or St. Thomas, or whatever it is. Churches' names do not change. The only time that they could possibly change is if they were torn down and something was rebuilt. That would be an opportunity to change because it's technically a new building. But you can also wiggle your way into, no, it's the same building, just rebuilt. It's the ship of Theseus, I think, that philosophical debate. So church names will remain the same. But keep in mind that a church is not a parish. And parishes often have churches, though you'll note that parishes often have more than one church. So for instance, St. Anne Parish has 2 churches. The Church of St. Anne, which is the parish proper building, and then a mission church, which is St. Thomas. And so even regular parishes often have more than one building that are usually missions. A parish, according to canon law, and I'm going to phrase it slightly differently than the code because I don't have it memorized, is a stably constituted of people living in a specific region. So Queen of Angel Parish has particular boundaries, which you can find at fathermaurer.com. I have a little map on there as well, as does St. Joseph Parish, as does St. Anne, St. Thomas, one parish, two locations, boundaries, as does St. Mary's. What we are doing with becoming one canonical parish, and that phrase is very deliberate. Partners in the Gospels we've been trying to do that because canonical refers to canon law. Canon law says that right now we are all individual parishes under singular leadership, which is allowed, and we will become one parish with multiple locations, still under singular leadership, one pastor. When we become one canonical parish, the parish will no longer just take its name from the church it's at. It will have a new name. And in theory, we could just pick which name we like the best, but that seems like a really good way to have people fighting with each other. Well, we want it to be St. Mary's, we want it to be St. Anne's, we want it to be St. Joseph. So that's not what's going to happen. The bishop absolutely will not permit that. He will not allow us to choose from among our current names to have one name remain as the parish name. So we will have a new name for the whole parish, which will now be a group of stably constituted people in a region that encompasses Clallam and Jefferson County, both counties. And that new name will apply to the parish, which is the group of people, but the individual churches will retain their names. So the short answer to your question is no, the names will not change. The long answer I'm not going to repeat because you just heard it, but the short answer is our churches will retain their names, but our parish, which is a new constitution, all of these communities unified as one parish, will receive a new name, which we will have input on. The bishop actually chooses it, but I believe what he did in Everett, the Archbishop did in Everett, I believe, was that they suggested 3 names, and he chose from among them. Yeah. So I believe that's how it's going to work, but I don't want to promise that, because ultimately the Archbishop could say, I don't like any of your names, go back to the drawing board, or I'm giving you a new one. He is the Archbishop, so he has the pointy hat. But I believe, he's a man of goodwill. I don't think he's going to try to snooker us or...
So it'll end up being like St. Thomas of Parish X, St. Anne's of Parish X, Queen of Angels of Parish X.
How we speak of it could be different. Right. I know. Yeah. It more than likely it will be Queen of Angels Church. It'll be St. Joseph Church, but it will be Parish. I'm going to make up a name. St. Jehoshaphat. I'm not quite sure if Jehoshaphat is a saint. I know he's somewhere in the Bible, but St. Jehoshaphat Parish. And then anytime we have anything that's localized, it would be St. Joseph Church or Queen of Angel Church, but somehow our logo or our branding, if you will be under the umbrella of whatever the name of the saint is that we choose.
Yeah, I saw one example, and actually when I was, it was 3 years ago, so this was before our partners and everything. I even heard of it and that kind of stuff. But I was vacationing out in New England, and so I think it was in New Hampshire. I went to Mass in southern New Hampshire somewhere. But it was, I remember at the time going, that's really odd, and I had to look it up on their website to find out why, but it said, it said St. Patrick's Church, and then in small writing on the sign it says, a Church of St. John's Parish. And I was like, why is that? What is that? And so I looked up, when I looked up the website, it was St. John's Parish, and then it had the list of 5 locations. Yeah. And so it said St. Patrick's Church, St. Peter's Church, all down the line. I went, oh, okay. And then you click on each one and show their mass times and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, okay. I was like, that's really odd that it's like that. And I was wondering, is it because it's rural? I don't know, right? But now we're here. I'm like, oh, see, that's what a lot of other places have gone through this process.
Can I just ask one last follow-up to that?
Sorry. It doesn't have to be your last one.
Well,
we still have a good hour and 10 minutes. Yeah.
Oxygen here, but
there's lots of oxygen.
You talked about each place having its, personality and such, but it sounds like we need a parish-wide identity.
And that's what this process is about. Yeah, that's why we're going through these listening sessions to go. We don't want to lose what we have individually. We're not going to lose what we have individually because people, I can't canonically, but if I were a dictator, I could just say, no, we're not going to call anything by any of its old names. We're going to go to a new name. What would end up happening is people would just do it anyway, right? Because it is our identity. You can't force someone to lose their identity. We want to do very consciously incorporating those parts of the identity, but we also want to create a not corporate, because that sounds very industrial, but a communal identity that encompasses all 5 communities from St. Thomas to St. Anne's. I don't need to repeat all their names, but one group identity that includes everybody, even as we recognize that there are distinct parts. I think of it, you might say it's an arranged marriage, because there's truth to that. The bishop has arranged this. We didn't necessarily date each other as parishes, if you will. But in a marriage, you have to sort of both retain the family traditions, and you're also creating a new family tradition. And even the church in its law doesn't say you have to change your names when you get married. Many people do, but you come together as a new, husband and wife, as a new family, even as you still are retaining your old family heritage and, frankly, connections, identity, different things.
That seems the trickier thing. Get
Yeah.
the big communal ID versus the individual ones.
Before I think you came in, a couple of us were talking about how the fact of the matter is there is real tribalism, a natural tribalism, but also to a degree of resistance. Even before we talked about parish families, when we were Clallam County or Jefferson County, and I don't say this with judgment, I don't say this with rancor, but I want to name the reality. Folks at Sequim, we're Sequim, we're not St. Joseph, we're not Queen of Angels. Folks in Port Angeles, we're Queen of Angels, we're not St. Joseph's. Folks in Forks, we're Forks, we're not Port Angeles or St. Joseph's. And while that does remain true, to poke at that and go, okay, but we are part of something bigger as well. And that's always been true, but it's more tangibly true now that we are going to be one canonical parish with one pastor. And so how do we embrace that in ways that are healthy and holy, while also not minimizing or diminishing or breaking down the things that really are important? And sometimes it's recognizing that the things we think are important aren't as important, and the things that we don't think are as important are things that we go, we just take it for granted, going, I got to make sure that that's valued. If I may give you an example, and I don't mean to take up all the air myself, in my family, when my brother and his wife got married, the only kid in my family who got married, as far as I know, I have a couple of siblings who have moved away and a half-sister who, anyway, it doesn't matter. My brother got married, and he married his wife. They're happily in love. They have 4 kids. My family and his bride's family, his wife's family, have deep and very fervent Thanksgiving traditions that we all took for granted. And now my brother and his wife are like, which one do we go to? Because if we don't go to the other one, I'm sure all of you married couples have faced this. And we really had to struggle with, okay, how do we preserve our family Thanksgiving traditions? Not put all the pressure on the two of them to go, you have to choose us, or you have to forsake them. And at the same time, we're not interested in doing their family thing. The Mowers have been doing their thing for years and years and years, and the other family that I don't necessarily want to name because they shouldn't be put on the spot, they've been doing their thing as well, and they don't necessarily want to do our thing. But at the same time, my brother and his wife are members of both families, and so how do they navigate that? I know every married couple has to face some form of that. The marriage analogy, I think, really applies to us, except, we've got 5. Yeah.
The geography, too, is the
right. And this is part of why, for us particularly, as Jason was mentioning, a lot of the practicalities really are self-evident in the geography. So we're not going to force a lot of things. I mean, I know that we used to do a parish picnic, for instance, and we would cancel all the masses at all the parishes around. And I think a lot of people really valued that for the effort that was being made there. And also there was a real pain point about, if you're canceling masses at St. Thomas and you got somebody driving from Nia Bay just to get to St. Thomas, which is 45 minutes to an hour, depending on where they live exactly, and you cancel that mass, and now they got to drive not just to Port Angeles, but beyond because of where the Grange is. You're asking them to drive an hour, half an hour, maybe a little further. Is it unreasonable for them to say, poop on you and your little picnic? Like they aren't going to thank us for that forced unity. And that's part of the reason why, for instance, we aren't necessarily doing a parish picnic. Also, the Grange sold the field next door, so we don't have a place to go. So that was the other reason we're not doing it. But I'm sorry, all that to affirm, it's a big challenge that's in front of us. The 3-year process of Partners in the Gospel, we're now in year 2. That's to get the basic foundation built. This is probably going to be an intergenerational kind of thing. Someone told me once at Holy Trinity in Bremerton, there's a Filipino community that had, through the vagaries of immigration and jobs and whatnot, a Filipino community kind of came in. Locals would say it felt like it was overnight. I'm sure it was incremental. But suddenly they found themselves in this bi-community kind of group of a huge English-speaking community that had been there for years and years, and a huge, deeply Catholic Filipino community. And it wasn't that people were resistant to each other, but there's something like, how do we integrate and how do we preserve the things that we care about? And we're not looking to be racist, we're not looking to be exclusionary, but there are things that we care about. And also, we are one church. And I asked, I don't know how it came up, I asked them, how did you guys do it? And they said it took about 30 years. 30 years to figure out how to do that well. And if you go to Holy Trinity, at least from the outside looking in, I mean, you got pancake breakfasts that also include lumpia, which, by the way, as we know here, because we have, I think, a decent Filipino community, nobody lost in that. But to get there probably cost a lot because, you know, all the Filipinos bring the various things, and you got the Knights of Columbus who are used to their bacon and eggs and hash browns going, wait a minute, are you taking our pancake breakfast away? And the Filipinos going, we come offering these great things. And vice versa. Marian feasts in the Philippines that we don't celebrate. And they're like, why are you guys enthusiastic about this? Or whatever it might be. Those are examples. Yeah. But we're going to be confronting our own version of that, even though we might not have as deeply held cultural differences. Definitely regional, definitely parochial differences. I'm going to stop talking now because that was quite the homily. But you're right. It's going to be hard. There's really no way around it. But the church names are not going to change.
And that's you know, an interesting point, too, that, you know, while it says Partners in the Gospel, one parish plan, everything is like a 3-year process. That's just the planning, right, of how things are going to get accomplished, right? It's not once we get to 3 years or whatever, oh, it's done, we're all good, we're a canonical parish, there's no more work to be done. No, that work will continue, as you said, multi-generational, right? What you're building here with that plan, with the one parish plan, something that's going to outlive probably most of the people on the council, on that super council that start off writing. And that's kind of what the gravity that I've also tried to put into it with the different PFACs. That what you guys have to understand, the work you're doing is very important. It's going to be something that, you know, outlives probably all of us. So, you know, just remember that when you're doing this work and not, you know, be so quick to, I want to cut corners so I can catch up or whatever, right, to where everyone else is. It's important to do it right. So, you know, we don't end up doing this again 20 years later or whatever, yeah. Right? So, but when it comes to when it comes to your parish name, it will be something that will be a little bit further down the line. So one of the things you will be talking about, right? This is why we go through these exercises, and they're important, even though sometimes they seem a little redundant, like the going through our "Who Are We" stage, right? Because it's important to recognize who each individual parish is right now, what they bring as their uniqueness and everything like that to this parish family, so that you can move forward with the second stage, which the second stage is, and that's kind of, I don't know if you would call it the fun part, but it's who do we want to become? So who do we as a group want to become? And then after that is, how do we get there, right? So you do the fun part of the ideas of you know, who do we want to become? Okay, so now comes some more work in stage 3, which is how do we get there? And so they come up, the PFAC and the leadership team and Father will come up with ideas like that, and all of you, because it's going to be open, right? There's going to be listening sessions all throughout the process. And then after that, that's when stage 4 happens, which is who do we want to be called? So you're still talking pretty far down the line before you have to talk about, you know, choosing a new canonical parish name.
I have a semi-follow-up.
Please,
that.
Yeah.
You were talking about the Parish Family Advisory Council. How are the people on that council selected or elected?
Yeah. So I chose them. I handpicked everybody on that council. Essentially every council is chosen by the priest. So the priest chooses who's going to be on it. Different priests choose different methods. So I went to the staff and said, okay, I really want to get these kinds of people. I want people who, what did I do? I went to John and Courtney, who are the 2 PAAs particularly. I probably talked to Christy as well about people who are invested in the community, deeply Catholic. So I want people who are committed to the community. I need people who are representative to some degree of some major section of the community. And obviously, there's no way I can have a lean, effective council and also include every single demographic and every single age group. So I wanted to choose particularly from the large, English and Spanish-speaking communities and people who are committed to the parish, practicing, have a viewpoint that isn't just, my particular thing, whatever it is. So at one of the council meetings when I first got here, we were talking about mass schedule changes. One of the people pounded the table and said, "Father, I don't care what mass time you choose as long as it allows me to keep my pancake breakfast at this time." And I was like, so that's a good priority, but it's not mine. Like, that can't be what decides what a mass time is. And this person wasn't like malicious or anything, but they just were naming, this is what's important to me. And so in choosing the people that I've asked to be on the council, I really wanted people, and I talked about it, I said, I need you to be able to look beyond the boundaries of your parish at not only what's good for, if you're from Queen of Angels, for Queen of Angels, but also be willing to consider things that would be considered sacrifices for a particular place, including your own, for the greater good. So trying to have sort of a broader vision, maturity, people who who are not necessarily inflammatory in their own way of doing things, or frankly, people respect and like and care about, because they're the people who I also have to get up in my name. And if they're people that people are like, oh, that's so and so who's the loudmouth or the jerk or whatnot. So trying to pick people who are known to be even keeled and whatnot. So I mean, that was sort of my process basically of it. Yeah.
Is there a place where these councils and who's on them is located?
Not yet, because we haven't had our first meeting yet. There will be.
Even pastoral or finance?
The pastoral and finance councils are really struggling right now, so we just don't have a lot of membership. So here at Queen of Angels, we have a pretty strong finance council. I think there is a poster somewhere. No, that's at Star of the Sea in Port Townsend. Port Townsend has a picture of the pastoral council. At least half of the membership is just no longer members. So the pastoral council, and I'll just name names so that you guys see the whole picture. In St. Mary's, Star of the Sea, our pastoral council, I think on that poster, had 9 people. Only 3 of them regularly attend. One of them, his wife died in December. Another one called in and said, I can't do this anymore. I've been doing it for 20 years or whatever it is. So basically, I mean, through attrition, not necessarily even I quit, I'm angry, just they've been doing it forever. They've got about 3 members on their pastoral council, and I think maybe 4, but only 2 who are really able to commit regularly on their finance council. So 3 and 4/2, depending on how you count it, very weak councils there. St. Joseph's, I want to say they have 5 regular pastoral council members. They have more technically on the books, but max 5 actually show up with any regularity. 2 members on the finance council. So they're struggling in a different way. Here at Queen of Angels, we have 3 members on the books for our pastoral council, 2 who regularly show up on our finance council, and one of them is here present. I believe we have 5 regulars, but I want to say 4 really strongly show up, but maybe that number is not quite right. So our finance council is pretty strong, pastoral council not. In Forks, they had neither finance nor pastoral when I got here. They had a parish council, which was really just the head volunteers planning practical things. So they were effectively a committee. So they have no councils whatsoever. This was part of why I wanted to start the summer with that priority of getting the councils bolstered, and then the faith formation priority became, frankly, just more pending for me, of immediate, like the timer is ticking to launch programs. So to deal with that, and Jason and I strategized a little bit about this. I also was working with the priests. I had initially thought I'm going to bolster my pastoral and finance councils and then use them to form the Parish Family Advisory Council. But the Parish Family Advisory Council has a timer on it of when we're supposed to accomplish certain things. So I reversed the priorities and go, okay, I'm going to focus on the Parish Family Advisory Council. And basically I'm going to set them on the task. I'm going to be like, all right, guys, I need you to be the ones who are leading these things. I will support you. And making them as autonomous and as empowered as I can with staff support. And once they are feeling comfortable in that, because also this is new for them, so I don't want to throw them under the bus, to be able to focus on building up our pastoral and finance council, because technically we're required to have one of each at every parish. So the fact that Forks doesn't have one at all of either is canonically illegal. Not that there's a canonical jail, but it's canonically illegal. The fact that we are so weak on each one is not illegal, but it's clearly a sign of weakness of like, oh gosh, our pastoral council here at Queen of Angels, 3 people, effectively. We can't really be an effective council advising the priests and receiving advice and projecting his vision and being available to the people. Similarly with the finance council at St. Joseph's, similarly with the pastoral and finance council at St. Mary's. I'm dodging your question a little bit because I want you to understand the context. No, we don't have those names out there, but it's not because I'm hiding them or I'm unwilling. It's because we're in such a weak state, and I'm really reluctant to put out limited numbers and have people going to them, and then they're already overwhelmed and just not having much. And the reason I haven't prioritized those is because of the Parish Family Advisory Council being such an imminent mandate from the Archbishop. But yes, we will, especially the Parish Family Advisory Council, because right now that's the focus. Once we've met, at least for the first time, and everybody kind of has a better sense of what they're doing, and frankly, I'm not saying they're not committed, but it becomes real once you meet and we start talking about the tasks. Once they're feeling like, yeah, I really want to continue on this, I'm really ready to do this, and admittedly with their permission, putting their names out there so that people know who they are and how to talk to them, and probably focusing, I don't want to give a timeline. I made that mistake at one of my parish family councils, parish town hall meetings. I was like, by January I'll have pastoral and finance councils in Forks. Not only did that not happen, but then Father Ed went and had a heart attack, and all of my plans went away. And that's not his fault or whatnot. But so I'm reluctant to give timetables, not because I don't want to give them, but because I don't know that I can fulfill them. So I hope that answers some of the question and gives at least some reason for why things aren't the way they should be, because they should be different. But that's where we're at. So.
And one thing I'll add too is that when it comes to, like I guess one of the reasons they call this is transparency, right? For like having your, people know who the PFAC members are and everything like that. But just so you know, it's because you're just having their first meeting and everything coming up. So that kind of thing may take a little bit of time. One example I'll give you is, I'll give this one because they are further along than most of the families that I have, and most of the other people, most of the other families actually in the diocese period. But our family that's down in Lacey and Yelm and Tenino. So their PFAC, I think they're now on meeting 5, I think, coming up. This is their 5th meeting. They just had, I want to say at meeting 3 is when they had their officers named. So, like a chair and a vice chair, things like that. And then in meeting 4, they actually, at that point, is when they had they put on the website a bio page. So like a headshot, name, and then like and like a 2-sentence blurb of who they are, basically, that they wrote themselves. And at first they were just going to print the names, but then there was one of the members who said, well, that's fine, but most people at Mass, they don't know your name, they know your face, right? They see you at Mass, and they're like, oh, okay, that's probably a good point, so okay, well, we'll do headshots. And then they posted that on their website and put it in a bulletin insert. But that just happened now, and this is meeting 4 for them. So to your point, you're just going to have meeting 1. Yeah. So it may take, after a couple of monthly meetings before you would see anything like that. So it won't be something, I wouldn't say necessarily quick.
Yeah. It's a good question, though. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry that where we're at, I'm not going to take full responsibility for it because some of the things were pre-existing or, things that came up. But I am responsible for making it right. And that's going to happen, but it might take a while. So.
Do the council meet on certain, like once a month? Or?
So we've talked about trying to make that happen. We haven't been able to establish a regular cadence in the way that we want to. There's lots of reasons. Some of them I think valid. Some of them have.
If you want to talk to somebody or ask questions,
right.
You've got no place to go.
So what has to happen, and it hasn't happened yet, is really twofold. One of it is we do need to have regular meetings. What I have proposed to the councils across, because I am still maintaining local some sort of council membership, and St. Joseph Queen of Angel I've compressed into central region councils. So even though they're distinct pastoral and distinct finance councils, we meet on the same day. So we actually have a finance council meeting between the 2 parishes tomorrow morning. But also...
excuse me, is that a joint meeting?
A joint meeting, yes. Technically, they're 2 meetings together, but I told them, if I had individual meetings with every single council, I would have 8 meetings a month, which I can't do monthly meetings anyway. So what I've told the councils is, for the outer regions, because they have their own priest, I've asked Father Gali and Father Ed if they would do, they're not meetings of the pastor, they're not pastors, they are not in charge of the parishes, but to have at least consultative meetings so they can bounce things off of them, and if they decide, Father Ed and Father Gali, oh gosh, this is really an urgent thing, talk to Father Maurer. And then on the first of the month, you guys know that I swap out with one of the other priests. When I'm out there, that's when I have the council meetings. So it's every other month it's in Forks, every other month in Port Townsend. Here, we're basically, what we're shooting for is, and we haven't established this really formally, so it's been a bit more catch as catch can, the second Sunday of the month, the second Saturday of the month, Saturday, having that meeting together. And the Parish Family Advisory Council, ultimately, I don't know that we're going to meet monthly because ultimately things that affect the whole parish family are not going to be as urgent or imminent because when you're talking about things that are going on, faith formation at this parish, faith formation at this parish, that's a local council issue. The Parish Family Council is probably going to meet quarterly in the long run. In this initial run, we're going to have to meet more frequently because we have milestones and events and deadlines we have to meet. So this first year is going to be more frequent. But we still haven't, we haven't had our first meeting, so I don't know how frequently it will be. That's the first step, having regular meetings. And we will be, when we figure that out, we will be publishing when those meetings are. Not because they're open meetings. I want to be really clear about that. These are not going to be open meetings. Parishioners are not going to be welcome just to show up. Some parishes do that. I will be open about that. Some priests do that. I don't like doing that because I have too many councils to manage that, and I have to have a controlled agenda for that meeting. But if people know who the council members are, and they're talking to them, that input will come in, and hopefully those responses and that vision will be going out. But the other part that's going to be really important that we haven't done yet, because we haven't had the stability, as in stable councils, is publishing our minutes on our website, so that you can go and go, what did they talk about? What did they talk about? What did they report? What is the news that is there? Those who care can find it. Those who don't care aren't even looking. But having those on the website. And I've only managed to implement this in all the parishes I've been at. The only parish I managed to implement this was at St. Mark's in Shoreline, because I was there for 5 years. Most of the parishes I've been at 4 years or less. And it usually takes, in a normal circumstance that I've been at, and I haven't been in a lot of normal circumstances, 3 years to really get all of that established, whether it's the technology side, the organization side, the membership side. It took me about 3 years to get there. And maybe it took 3 years in St. Mark's as I got there, and then COVID hit fairly short afterwards. So I tell you 3 years, I feel a little bit like Scotty, where he's like, it's going to take me 2 hours to fix the engine. And really it took 20 minutes, but he gave himself buffer. I don't know that it's going to take me 3 years to get there, but there's a lot that gets to build to that point to get those things going. But yeah, to have a regular schedule, have people know who's on the councils, and then to have the minutes published, to my mind, that gives everybody the opportunity to see what's going on, to respond to it to the responsible people, for that to be brought into those advisory meetings, and then whatever the response is or whatever vision needs to be proclaimed, for it to go back out, not only from me, but from the council members.
Can I add something real quick?
Please, yeah.
I just want to point out that all of the council minutes are in fact permanent records.
Yes.
So there will be at least one hard copy somewhere in the office. I have not decided where I'm going to keep them yet. So it does not have
Ladies
to
and
be
gentlemen,
like,
Danielle is our archivist at the office.
So it's not something like, oh, you have to go online to access them. I won't be able to pull them out just because you walked in and asked for them, but with a couple days notice, I could get you copies. And
Yeah, they're not secret. In fact, they're required not to be secret, in all honesty.
Are the meetings open?
No, the meetings are not, and that was what I was saying earlier. The reason the meetings are not open is it invites a kind of chaos, and I'm not looking at you because you would invite chaos. You have open meetings. That means anybody who comes in with, well, you might, anybody who comes in with a chip on their shoulder, and maybe I have things that I really got to make sure we discuss things that are pressing, and maybe that chip on the shoulder really is important. But in my experience, having open meetings usually leads to less productive meetings that we need to, where if people are talking to the council members and perhaps having those conversations, frankly, in the longer than the hour and a half that we can really budget for a meeting, they can really distill that down and that person can represent it. So it is a representative process. It's not a democracy at all, but it's not a direct representative. It's a going through the council members. But we've got a few steps to get there between getting our councils beefed up to a sufficient number, having those names known, and also having the issues that we're discussing and the decisions that are made put out in those minute forms. And I'm not saying this is a replacement for it. I'm not trying to pretend the town halls or my blog or the pastor's notes or the announcements are a replacement for it, but it's one of the reasons why I've really tried to prioritize this, prioritize the blog, prioritize the pastor's notes. And I don't know if you guys know this, I don't usually try to put a lot of really beefy parish things in, but I try to put up a pastor's post on my blog every week as well that at least is mentioning some of the things that are going on. Although I will point out that I have not actually written the pastor's post for this week because I've been crazy behind, so those aren't, my website isn't always as up to date, but I try to have a bunch of avenues where if you want to be informed, you can be. And I do hope that there is some obviousness to, I try to stand outside of church before and after Mass, even when I'm running between Masses, so that there is some accessibility. That's not a replacement for functional, well-staffed, transparent councils. But I do want to reassure you, I guess I sound a little defensive right now, but I want to reassure you that there is good faith effort that's going on here, and I do want to make sure that we get to where we're supposed to be as well. So,
And I haven't seen too, it's like when it comes to PFACs anyway, any PFACs that have been, open, right, meetings, mostly because the one thing about the PFAC is that unlike, some of the other councils, there's actual, I'm not going to say that pastor councils don't do work, but there's work that the PFAC do, and almost entirely, everybody does, I think, about an hour and a half meeting. There's a couple do 2 hours, they're pretty long, but that entire time is filled with work that they're doing. So they really wouldn't have time to do, like, say, Q&A or anything like that with people. So that it's a working group meeting for the most part with those guys. But every one of them have all committed to also, like, to the transparency, because that's one of the things we stressed a lot, was to say, do things like, share one example would be to share like a blurb of, maybe a paragraph or something after a PFAC meeting, in a bulletin, in the next bulletin or bulletin after that, just says, hey, this is what, we talked about or what we worked on. Just so people have an idea, and it's not a mystery to them, right? They said, well, because we don't want people to say, I don't even know what a Parish Family Advisory Council is, and it's been operating for a year, right? We don't want that to happen. So we want to make sure that people understand what's happening with those, and the work that's being done, because it's going to be important, because those listening sessions will come in the future as well, and it's going to be important to get people to participate. And one of the best reasons to get them to participate is for them to actually know what's going on. So as long as that's happening, I think that that'll be good. And I think that the transparency will help with that, even if the meetings are not open.
Can I ask another one?
Please, yeah.
Am I allowed?
Follow up or different.
This
Yeah.
is a different topic.
Fair enough.
Right, but I also just choked on my juice.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've done that before.
bad.
Turns out you can't breathe apple juice. Who knew?
Feels the straw.
I'm
No.
sorry.
What's your vision for children, and more specifically, children's catechesis or faith formation at Q of A?
Yeah, here at Queen of Angels. So let me start with faith formation, because that's easier. I can define that a little better than I can define the other parts. There's a part of me, I just want to be transparent about, there's a part of me that would like to entertain and explore the idea of as many joint programs as possible within a region, in our case, between Queen of Angels and St. Joseph's. I really want for us to confront the natural tribalism that happens in any group, whether it's a family, like in that marriage relationship I was talking about with my own family or whatnot, or in parishes. And I would like to push us to consider, are there ways that we could do things as joint? One of the ways that worked out really well this year, and it came out of necessity, it wasn't like we decided to do it, but we realized we needed to do it, is OCIA. Now that's not children, and I know that. Children and adult catechesis is different, because adults can drive themselves. Adults are self-motivated. You're not necessarily driving an unruly teenager into something. They want to come, and you're talking converts who are like, I want to become Catholic, so they're particularly motivated. But we're having a joint OCIA. Sorry, they've changed the name from RCIA to OCIA, effective this Advent, but they're having it here. I don't know if it's going to be in this room or that room, depending on how big it is, but it's going to be in this building. A joint OCIA program between our two parishes. So we had been doing them somewhat split. No, last year it was at St. Joseph. I think before that it was somewhat split. But we're going to join them, and we're going to stay joined. That's a thing we're definitely doing. Confirmation, again, we're on track to not have confirmation here this year because of a variety of things. And my backup has always been, if I can't do it at one parish, I can always at least do it at the other if we don't have enough volunteers or things fall through. And First Communion, we are on track to have individual ones at each parish. I would like to, again, I want to repeat it because I believe that there might be something possible, and I want to push us against the knee-jerk reaction of, I want my kids' faith formation at the parish where they go to church. That's a natural thing, but I also want to go, okay, how are we living out the jointness, especially of these two parishes, which are the closest in geography? How can we live that out? Now, maybe that doesn't mean joint programs. Maybe it means some joint events or whatnot, but some sort of joining of the two. On the flip side, and this has been the initial and strong reaction, even of my leadership who's supportive of, even of my staff who I pay to be supportive of me, I've said, you're talking about kids who are coming out of school, you're talking about families who live, not necessarily even in the city centers, but maybe on the outside of the opposite end of the city. So I don't live in Squim, I live more close to Chimicum than I do close to Port Angeles. And if you make me come to Port Angeles, maybe I don't come, not because I'm unfaithful, because it's just not feasible for me. And vice versa if I live in I think it's Joyce, that's that away, and you make it in Squim. And that's a really compelling argument. I'm not really excited about all the driving I have to do myself. And so the thing that I have absolutely mandated for all of our faith formation programs, particularly in the central region, and long-term, it's not this year, but in the coming years, we must have consistency in our faith formation programs. And by that I mean OCIA, confirmation, and First Holy Communion, so sacramental prep. We must have consistency in the topics that we're covering, the basic timeline of the program, so when it starts and roughly when it ends. So in other words, I don't want to have one program that covers these things, but this one doesn't. So we're not covering an equal amount and the important things. I don't want to have one program that starts in January and ends in May, and one program that starts in September and ends in June. In part because parents who may not be motivated to drive because if something is there, they will be motivated to go, I want to game the system and have the shortest commitment ever. And also, we want to have it be fair. Why do they have a 2-year program and I have a 1-year program? And the last thing is I want to have consistent expectations. So for instance, is attendance required at everything at one parish and not required at the other? Am I allowed to miss 10 sessions here but only 3 sessions here? You're required to go on a retreat here but not a recorded retreat here, or I'm required to go to Sunday Mass here and not go to Sunday Mass here. So to have that consistency. The hardship, of course, is not only are we geographically distant, but in Forks, I've got folks who, in Spanish and English, who don't have necessarily the economy or the freedom or even the geography that supports them coming in on a weekday. So our timelines are restricted to Sundays, which means 52 potential Sundays, and then you start subtracting holidays and holy days and different things, and the program suddenly shrinks way below what I would ideally want. But if I'm asking people who are coming, nobody's really coming from La Push, quite frankly. But if they were living in La Push, for instance, and coming out there, requiring them to come in. Or I've got Spanish-speaking people who are immigrants who are working in the field, and Sunday is a day. Weekdays are a day, and Sunday's the only day they can come in. So like Forks is always going to be a particularly special circumstance because of those things. So I want them to cover the same topics. I want them to have a general timeline. The expectations are actually easier to mandate because it's like, look, we all can have the same attendance no matter how many classes. We can all require, and we are, come to Sunday Mass. What are we doing here? If you're not coming to Sunday Mass, why are you getting the sacraments right now at this point in your life? And same with retreats. But some of it gets squishy on those circumstances. Port Townsend actually has some similar things. I've got people who are living in Brennan. I've got people who are living in Chimacum. I've got people living, further in different directions. Theirs aren't quite as extreme, but still those things exist there as well. Between Port Angeles and Sequim, I'm a little less sympathetic to people who are like, well, it's hard to come to church, it's hard to come to Mass. I'm like, Highway 101, it can be hell at different times, especially in tourist season or the Lavender Fest, or what's that lumber one? There's some... Irrigation. Oh my goodness, that was a horrible weekend, or whatever it may be. Yes. But we've got highways that are generally well maintained, relatively clear, relatively wide, even when it's one lane. But we can get around a lot easier because we're in the more central areas. But I want to have that consistency across the programs in those 3 areas particularly, timeline, topics, and expectations. And this year particularly, we're really drilling into that a little bit more. Last year we couldn't because we had just arrived. We didn't really know what this all meant. We didn't know all the players in the game. We're not there yet, so Forks is particularly different. Port Townsend is less substantially, but still somewhat different. Here in the middle regions, we're more consistent, although part of that is because we only have one confirmation program, it looks like. And our First Holy Communion programs, we've been meeting all of the volunteers between both parishes and going, okay, let's compare calendars, let's compare notes. So those are the general expectations of faith formation. So I answered the first half of your question. What about children catechesis and CCD or children's liturgy of the word or those kinds of things? I don't have a clear vision in general for what I want to do. I'm very open to having CCD. I'm very open to having Sunday programs. I'm very open to having, I know the Family Faith Formation does different events of those kinds of things. One of the things that I immediately glommed onto when I got here in July, Children's Liturgy of the Word, and some of you have heard this before and maybe some of you haven't, Children's Liturgy of the Word has been a particularly painful thing for me to see as a priest, because I would say the vast majority of the kids that are coming up and then being dismissed out of Mass are baptized Catholics who are being ushered out of the church for a pivotal part of the Mass. And oftentimes the adults who are going with them are also absent. I don't know if they're going to Mass or not. I'm not trying to judge or claim one thing, but going, gosh, we're setting up kids to not even fulfill their Sunday obligation and be part of the community, and we're training them to leave the Mass and not training them to be part of the Mass. And yeah, behavior can be an issue, and certainly I know parents appreciate that break, but having them in the Mass is such an important thing. And it was one of the first things I remember telling the staff and I think the pastoral council. I was like, at some point I'm going to end Children's Liturgy of the Word. I actually wanted to end it last summer, and I was talked out of it because I was told that you will have everyone kill you. And that probably is true. And so we kept it through the year. And at the end of the year, I started to spread word, although I know that I didn't do a great job, particularly here, of telling everybody that we're not going to resume that this year. And we've got to find something else. And the thing that I'm thinking of, but I don't have a clear vision, I certainly don't have a structure or a framework or a plan for it, is if we can do something either between Masses. I know St. Joseph has the 2 Masses, so between Masses there, or after Mass here. I don't think before Mass is going to fly. I mean, if people are up for it, I'll support it, but I don't see that happening. But something after Mass, something that we're offering, if people are up for it. It's the during Mass piece that really bothers me about particularly that program. I don't think that what's offering in the Children Lead the Word is bad. I don't think that the effort is bad. I certainly don't think it was malicious or ill-intended. But taking Catholics out of Mass, baptized Catholics. It'd be one thing if you're talking about kids who haven't yet been baptized, but we've got baptized Catholics who, strictly speaking, have an obligation to be at Mass, and we're helping them grow in that. I was like, man, I just don't know that I can, I don't believe I can support that. So that's particularly a big change, but I don't have a substitute for it. And that's been the big pushback from those that I have talked about. Like, what are you going to give in exchange? Like, what are you going to offer that can fulfill, if not and I understand there is a big motivation for some parents of like, okay, I get an hour where I can actually be part of the Mass because I'm not fussing with kids or whatnot. I don't have a solution for that.
20 minutes, not the whole hour.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. 20 minutes. I'm sorry. You're absolutely right. But I have a portion of the Mass that I can pay attention, especially the homily part of the Mass. I don't have a solution for that. I don't quite know how to solve that. But I want to offer something. But you could easily put my feet to the fire in the statement, which is true. I don't have a vision for it. I don't have a plan for it particularly, other than I'd love to see something. I don't know what it could be or what it will be. So I'll pause there and please offer whatever you.
Well, just so you know, we're not just doing arts and crafts over there. Yes, we do.
Oh, you do catechesis, yeah.
We're also saying the readings and the gospel, which I know is the whole thing, but in kid-friendly terms.
Yeah.
So actually more accessible for them to understand
what's going on in there. Yeah.
In the Mass. So the idea of stripping them out of the Mass sounds very aggressive.
Sure. Yeah.
And instead, we're trying to make the Mass more accessible for them. And so, sorry, I get worked up.
No. This is, and you're not the only one.
And we saw a need for it. There was a need. There was nothing here, so that's why we started it. And people clapped.
Yeah.
They clapped at Mass.
Right. We want to support this. Yeah. And I want to support the effort, even if it's not the means. I want to support the effort. I'm spitballing a little bit because I can't tell you that I've committed to this or that I have thought it deeply about it. But one of the conversations we had in the pastoral council was, well, maybe we could make the Masses specifically more kid-friendly. Like maybe we have a reserve section with the kids up front. Maybe I do what I do with the school Mass. I don't know how many of you have been at the school Mass where I specifically engage with the kids, or we have one of the Masses be the kids' Mass, where the kids have a reserve section and I'm asking them questions and eliciting responses and engaging with them, which I am totally willing to do. I really am. I think it was you that I left the voicemail message here.
It was, but that's not.
No, that's there. But
here before that.
that's fair. But I want to acknowledge that I have not broadcast that decision at all to Queen of Angels. It completely dropped off my radar. St. Joseph's, because I was working with their faith formation program, which was unified with this, where I think Children Lead the Word was a distinct program from the First Communion and confirmation programs. We had this conversation explicitly because we had already been meeting about this. So that's a fault on my part, and I expect that there will be a similar reaction. I don't think you're alone in going, hey, you've taken away something that we really care about, that we think accomplishes things that we really matter to us. And I will need to own that, and I'm happy. I am sorry. I'm happy to apologize to you and anyone who cares about it here, because I did drop the ball, and I didn't communicate that this was my intention and that I want to do something there. But I do want to do something there, and I don't know what that's going to look like, whether it is a program after Mass or it's reshaping. I don't know that I want to reshape all the Masses, all 2 of them, admittedly, only because how much effort, how many people can we gather around both the Masses? But maybe we have the 8:30 Mass be, hey, this is our family Mass, and we're going to find a way to really key into that and have that be part of that. I'm not saying that's necessarily the solution. I'm not saying it's the best solution, but I want to find one. But do I have a vision? To circle back to your original question, not specifically, and I don't have a particular clear path on where to go forward on that from here. So, yeah.
Completely different topic.
Sure. Yeah.
But I must say, Father, this is amazing. The more I hear you talk about all this logistical stuff and administrative stuff, the more respect I have for you as a homilist. Where do you have time to even prepare for that? but It's just, your masses are so beautiful. But with regard to the masses, I'm wondering if, is it okay for, if we just, at the end of a mass, especially the weekday mass,
Okay.
where it's just a few of us who are available to come to mass, at the end of the mass, is it okay for us to break open the book and sing a song as you're
Amen.
processing out? I mean, it just seems like we should be singing. Pick a Mary song or something.
We
and-
need music Saturday night, period.
So that
Well, I didn't mean to get into.
the Saturday night thing is, let's just affirm that absolutely, and I will happily have choirs or whatnot.
There's contact information for a person in one of the upcoming bulletins. I don't remember which one.
Well, I didn't mean to get off.
But you're talking about
Yeah.
daily masses,
I'm
not
talking
the
about
Saturday
weekday
evening mass.
masses.
So there's a couple things I want you to know. The short answer is yes. So let's just start there. The short answer is yes, because technically mass has ended, and once mass has ended, you can't do whatever you want, but you can in fact have music. The comma but also caveat is this. And there's a document that I would love for you all to read, because the more people who read the documents of the church, the more educated you are. It is about 50 pages, but you just go to the part that matters for your context. It's called Musicum Sacrum, Sacred Music in the Mass. It's a Vatican II document. It was written in 1975-ish, right around. There are other documents that have followed afterwards, but it's really good about talking about when you sing the Mass. And we're meant to sing the Mass, particularly Sunday Mass. In fact, there are certain parts of the Mass that are, if not explicitly demanded, because they're not, but they're very close to like, you really should be singing this. The Alleluia is one of those. You really should be singing the Alleluia on Sundays, not necessarily on weekdays. But if you choose to sing at any Mass, there are ranks of different things. So if you sing at Mass at all, you must first sing these parts. These parts, if you sing, must always be sung. I don't remember which is which, so forgive me for not saying which they are, because I'll get it wrong. So if you sing these parts, if you sing at all, you must choose these parts first, and they must get sung first before you go on to any other parts. And then the second and third, you can pick either or both. But if you want to sing, I'm going to make up a thing here because I can't remember which is where, but let's say you want to sing a communion hymn. If you want to sing a communion hymn, you must have already committed and figured out how to sing the rest of these things before you can pick one of the second or third ranks. So the first rank must take priority. A closing hymn is in none of those ranks because the closing hymn is after the Mass has ended. So if your heart is set on singing a closing hymn, the only thing I would absolutely expect of you is that you consult with the priest before the Mass starts. Because if you start singing a closing hymn and you're the only one singing, it looks like you're kind of being showy and whatnot, or maybe bossy. That's a bad look for you. And not even in the sense that I would be that. Other parishioners are going to resent if someone is just presuming to sing. Also, there should be some guidance about, are you picking songs that people know? I should know. I did it wrong about half the time when I'm trying to pick hymns at the Saturday evening Mass. But so collaboration in that. If you want to sing more than a closing hymn, which is not what you said specifically recessional, but maybe you meant that as an intro to other things, we would need to talk about how do we choose when we sing a daily Mass, because there is a theme, it's not written in any documents, but there is a theme that has been in conversation of liturgical conversations since Vatican II of what's called progressive solemnity. And that's not an official term from the church, but you'll see it. If you Google progressive solemnity, Catholic Mass, a lot of commentators use that. And the idea is that you reserve the most solemn and the most fancy Masses for the highest feast days. Now, the critique is, what if I want to have nice things all the time and I can do it? The church doesn't forbid that. But our fanciest, biggest days should look different than our regular workday Masses when someone's coming in from work, only has 20 minutes, and then needs to get back to work. And if you sing every single part of the Mass just gets longer. It's one of the reasons why Pope Francis kind of talked about priests going on and on like I'm doing tonight, but at Mass. Like your homily really should be, especially at daily Mass, somewhat concise because people need to get on with their day. It's not the Lord's Day of rest, it's our regular day. So I've expanded your question probably perhaps beyond what the scope you set for it, but the short answer is yes, we could easily have a closing hymn. I think that if you wanted to do that, whatever Masses you go to have a small cohort of people who are working with you, and then to go to the priest who regularly celebrates that Mass. There's going to be some changes in which priest celebrates which Masses coming up fairly shortly, so hang tight on that. Mass schedule's not changing. I want to be really clear about that. The Mass schedule's not changing. We're just shuffling a little bit of priest things. But perhaps talking to some of the folks that like to sing and saying, hey, I'd like to do this. Father Maurer has expressed his support for it. Would you be willing to join me in maybe choosing some hymns? I would recommend starting with the recessional hymn. And frankly, we would also want to kind of get the temperature of the people who go to that daily Mass. Because if nobody wants to sing and you're the only one, I'm sorry, my friend, you know.
Well, you don't want to hear me.
Oh, fair enough, yes. But I also want to respect the fact that the Mass is the Mass itself, but the Mass is also the gathering of those people. And maybe, for instance, our Wednesday evening Mass tends to be a little more contemplative, tends to be a little quieter. Not that people aren't joyful, they're actually really excited about it. But I would be reluctant to change the tenor of that and ruin what they've got unless that was something that they felt could be incorporated in. So that's some of the things there. I expanded the scope of your question, but short answer is yes, it could easily be done, or not easily, but simply be done. And it could be even expanded with some careful massaging and directing of things.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you mentioned, I think it might have been last weekend, that if people wanted to sing, you would assign the songs, or they should check with the 8:30 choir.
Right, because they already picked hymns.
But 8:30 choir music is not Saturday night music.
Okay.
In that the
Well,
style.
Saturday night used to be a folk mass.
Oh, okay, all right.
No, it was good.
No, I'd forgotten about that as all. Yeah, it's fine.
I mean, that's sort of it. Yeah.
I am not interested in making every Mass a cookie cutter Mass in the hymnody. I won't deny that looking at the books, and I've told the choir directors, the day is not today or tomorrow or in the near future, but there will come a day when we're going to sit down and go through the hymns and go, these hymns are bad hymns. Or even Father Maurer is just, these are not hymns that are going to be allowed anymore. And I'll have reasons for them. It's not going to be an arbitrary of, I don't like this hymn, but there are hymns in Breaking Bread that are not good hymns. They're maybe approved for Masses, but we're going to need to talk through and go, okay, these hymns, they're squishy in theology, or they're weird syncopation, or they're hard to sing. I mean, some of them are very practical, some of it's theological. An easy example would be Rain Down. Do you guys know the hymn?
Yeah.
Rain down, rain. I'm really sorry if this is your favorite hymn. I'm really sorry if you're listening to this and your favorite hymn. It's a terrible hymn, guys. It's just repetitive. It doesn't really praise God. It's not really about anything that's in the liturgy. It's just sort of it's a nice, happy-go-lucky song, but it's not really worship or hymn. That's the kind of thing I want to apply to looking at our hymn and going, we're going to choose hymns that are really about the prayer and really about that. Now, there's room for diversity in there. When I was meeting with the different choirs, someone asked me, because they know I lean conservative, I think that's a fair evaluation, are you going to require that we do all chant all the time and all traditional? I'm like, I mean, if I was a dictator, yeah, I absolutely would. But the church does allow for a range, and so choosing within that range, within some parameters about, okay, what hymns are actually, even if they're in the book, they're not really that appropriate, they're not really that fitting, or they're not good music, or they're really hard to sing. And you guys have been at Saturday Masses where I've chosen hymns that are just too high for my range or too low, or they're just really hard to sing in general. And there are hymns that, frankly, once you write them, you're like, oh gosh, that's something you really have to have a full, orchestra or choir or something that's really accompanying it, and that's not fitting for us. So I'm sorry, all of that sort of detour to say, I'm happy to have someone choose hymns for the 5 o'clock Mass. I really would want it to be an actual choir, though, and not just an individual, including me. I don't want to be choosing hymns at the 5 o'clock Mass. And as you know, last Saturday, I'm exhausted. I can't do it. But yeah, I don't have any problem with having hymns that are chosen for a particular Mass. I think the one caveat I would like to avoid, I don't like having Masses that are a particular style of music. Because then it becomes, oh, this is the folk, this is the charismatic or whatnot. And the times of the Mass are not there for a style. They're there for a demographic. People need to come to that Mass, or my kids can't go to the evening Mass, I need to go to the 8:30. And if you could only go to the 5 o'clock Mass and you can't stand folk music and it's the folk Mass, only folk music, you're torturing a group of people. Where if you have a range and go, okay, we're going to have this kind of music for this season, or we're going to do this for this period of time, or we're going to have a sprinkling across all the Masses, then you can satisfy different people at different times. Maybe not all the time, but we're doing a better job on that front. One of the things that I set for our choirs, particularly in the central region, is the requirement that we have the same Mass setting at all of the Masses. So you guys may have noticed 907, I keep telling you, turn to 907 during the Gloria, because we're doing the Mass of Spirit and Light or something like that. We switched to that Mass setting at both of our parishes because I want any Catholic who walks into our Masses, assuming they're coming on a regular basis at any of our 4 Masses, to at least know the Mass settings as we're learning them along. So when we switch to the chant Masses, we're doing, say in English, we're doing all the chant Masses, the Holy, Holy, the Gloria, the Memorial Acclamation, the Lamb of God. We're singing the same Mass settings even if the hymns are different at each Mass. So there's that consistent through line of the same words and the same tune for the Mass setting for a season. So that's where the uniformity matters, not because of uniformity's sake, but for that consistent through line of common practice, even as you have diversity maybe of hymns or styles. So, sorry, you got a homily and maybe you didn't ask for that, but yeah. I would love to have a group of people who are willing to lead hymns and the Mass parts at Mass, even if they weren't cantering in front, just to have folks who are just leading people and singing at the 5 o'clock Mass. Yeah, we'll get there. I think we've got a little bit, like you said, we've got a lead on that of a few people who are willing to start a little bit of leadership on that. So I don't know when they'll, I haven't pushed them real hard because I don't want to scare them off.
Yeah, didn't we kind of have that with Norm?
We did. Yeah, Norman Coe stepped down in January. I don't think it's a secret, and Norm and I met several times, and I told him, I think that he would testify as well. This wasn't looking to kick Norm out or get rid of him or his choir. The thing that I told him, happy to tell you guys as well, in January we had the choir director in Port Townsend retire. He had been doing it for I think 20 years or so. Christopher Hawley, I think he was, stepped down and retired, and his choir was up front. And in Port Townsend particularly, they had moved a piano up front, and they had moved the ambo to the other side, and there wasn't room for the presider's chair, so it was up next to the altar about 2 feet away. And I was like, look, this is a bad arrangement. We need to move the choir to the choir loft. And moving choirs it's the third rail. It is the third rail of any conversation, because choirs that want to be up front want to be up front. Choirs that want to be at back want to be at back, and never shall the twain meet. Except having only one choir that's up front and having the rest of the choirs in the back has its own sort of like, what are we doing? What does this mean? So I went to Norm and said, this seems like a good opportunity, because it was the only choir that would be left that's up front, to have all the choirs have a common practice. And there is a practicality as well. The choir up front at Queen of Angels meant you could only have 3 to 5 members top. And if anybody else wanted to join the choir, there's no room, because you'd be spilling out there. Where we have a choir loft where there'd be lots of room, and we have consistent practice across the way. And the choir talked about it, and Norm and I met several times, and Norm just wasn't really keen on that. He really felt that being up front was a particular value. And I'm like, well, look, at the end of the day, I really think this is something that has to be done. And I made that decision. And he said, well, I'm going to step down when that decision is in effect. And I will let Norm and his choir speak for themselves, because I don't want to put words in their mouth, but they would be certainly welcome to sing. I mean, their music is absolutely welcome. Their talents are absolutely good. But having it up front was something I was like, we need to bring that to an end for both the practicality of the choir and whether it grows or shrinks or whatever, but I really would like it to grow, and also to have that consistency of practice across all of the parishes. So you're absolutely right, we did, but that's sort of the story of why that changed. And I don't begrudge Norm and the choir how they might want to share their perspective or whatnot, but I would encourage talking to them if that's something you're interested in. 15 minutes or so. Becky, no one else is raising their hand, so you're doing fine. As soon as someone else raises their hand, I'll give them a chance too. So yeah.
So are we set? Do we get to keep 3 priests?
I don't think we should ever ask Father that question.
Oh. Becky, I'm going to tell you a story that I think I've told at a couple of town halls now.
Oh, sorry.
No, don't be sorry. You're just vibrating the chord of my heart, because the question is on my heart as well. We have deanery meetings. A deanery is the gathering of all the parishes around and all the pastors and the priests. For the first, I'm going to say 5 deanery meetings, I brought that question up every single time. I am afraid that there's going to be a crisis somewhere else in the diocese. They're not going to have enough other priests, and they're going to look at us and go, you have 5 churches, but they're all kind of small, and compared to a lot of the Seattle Tacoma churches, we are physically small, both in church size and attendance numbers. You look at Forks and Forks and Clallam Bay, on an average weekend, they have 150 or less people total across 3 masses. You could argue you don't need one whole priest to cover 150 people. And until you put the geography in and go, oh my goodness, you've got people coming in from Nia Bay to Clallam Bay and whatnot, and you've got 2 English-speaking communities, but you could argue that. Port Townsend has, I'm spitballing, I don't know the exact numbers, but let's call it 250 people who come to Mass every weekend. That church could hold just 250 people in 1 Mass, maybe 2 Masses. Do you really need one whole priest for 2 Masses or even just 1 Mass there? Our 2 parishes we have to have 4 masses because we almost fill the churches each mass. We don't fill it like to capacity, but we average, I think the number I saw in the paper, in the report I got, 352 people here. It was the number given, although weirdly that was also the capacity number, so someone might have just copied and pasted both. Let's say 350 people here, and I think it's 250, close to 300 people at St. Joseph's. And we can't fit everybody at St. Joseph's into one mass, and we could fit, but it'd be actually at capacity, everybody into one mass here, but just barely. So we got to have one priest here. 3 masses would be very tight, but 4 masses is practically necessary. So it is conceivable, I'm sorry, I give you all these facts because it is conceivable that we could run this parish family on 2 priests. We would die. I mean, just honest to God, it would be awful. I have a contingency plan. If that becomes necessary, I would require that the other priests live in Squim, and we would basically be centralized and go out for the weekends and only live in the 2 areas and basically minister, because I just can't do it. I can't do it any other way. There's lots of reasons. But I'm sorry, back to the deanery meeting. I was nervous, and I brought it up several times. We had our 6th meeting, or what, I don't know if you were at that meeting when Father Lazzaroni was at St. Joseph's. Maybe you weren't there. Father Lazzaroni, who's the Vicar General, was there. And I raised my hand and said, Father Lazzaroni, I bring this up every time. And the dean said, would somebody shut Jacob up and reassure him we're not going to take his priests away? And he said it lovingly, but, also kind of, like this comes up every meeting. And the Vicar General could not promise me anything. He was very clear about that. But he reassured me that keeping 3 priests here really is a major priority, because of 2 reasons. A, they really do believe it's necessary. I don't think there's any real doubt about that. It's always that temptation when they're under pressure to take the shortcut of grabbing what seems like an extra priest. But I think that he really is, and the Archbishop, we think it's necessary. The other piece that he and others have said in the Chancery, particularly from the Vicar for Clergy office, is we are keenly aware that many people in the rural areas of the Archdiocese have the distinct and not unreasonable impression that if you're outside of Seattle or Tacoma, you don't really matter. And so we'll take and move and change people around whatever we want. And we need to change that perception. And while they could not and would not guarantee me anything, I think mostly because we don't have enough priests anywhere, a lot of visa things could happen and we would lose priests all across the Archdiocese. A lot of our extern priests are in the same situation as Father Gali. They've got a timer on them. Father Gali's visa, at the very latest, will expire in 1.5 years or so. It could expire earlier depending on some various circumstances that are still being investigated and clarified. But Father Gali will leave us no later than July of 2027. And we will need another priest. Because his visa expires, he has to go back to his country, I think spend 1 year there and then come back for another 5-year stint. And we have various vicars who are in circumstances of similar kinds of thing. And I will tell you, that's where the rubber hits the road for me. Because when Father Gali leaves, who's taking his place? What's the plan for it? What are we going to do about it? Father Ed has a 3-year term. He has a timer on him. He will be 69 years old in July 18th, I believe it's the 18th, of 2027. He will be eligible more or less for retirement. And he's talked about how he had the heart attack. Things are kind of going along. 69 is not terribly old, but I think it's fair to say 69 is no longer young. And so he's looking at, maybe I retire. Maybe my medical circumstances require that I be closer to bigger hospitals. My dad, his dad is in Bellingham. Maybe his dad has needs. His dad is much older, but maybe his dad has needs, or maybe he just needs to be up nearer to things. If Father Ed leaves, who are they going to send to Forks? Forks is a particularly difficult assignment in as much as it's remote, in as much as you have to find things to do. You can't just send anybody to Forks because you're going to kind of drive a guy to, maybe not insane, but to discouragement or depression or whatnot if he's not suited to that kind of individual, freedom or whatnot. So, I'm sorry, again,
Well, your
here
own
we go.
health matters too. I mean, they don't want you to be driven into the
Oh, no.
ground with all the...
We'll have a conversation on that in a week. We will. Believe it or not, I've been having those conversations, and there's some changes that are going to be made, but they're mostly affecting me. But we'll have that conversation. Oh, I believe me, that's on my mind. But those are my 2 real big barometers, because I got timers on both of them. Father Ed could renew his vicar term and spend another 3 years there. Father Gali absolutely is gone, July 2027, and we're going to have to replace it. So I've got at least 1 priest they're going to have to replace, possibly 2. And that's going to be it's probably going to be a really clear indicator of, do they mean what they say? All I can tell you for certain is every person I've talked to, the Vicar General, our local bishop, Bishop Schuster, our deanery, and members of our deanery who are on the priest personnel board. Now, they don't make decisions, they advise the Archbishop. but who are all in agreement you need 3 priests. You really can't do it reasonably, long-term, feasibly, sustainably without 3 priests total. Are they going to be able to hold up against that temptation? And I think we all know the temptation to take shortcuts, to take the easy path in various parts of our lives. I hope so. Believe me, I'm going to be banging down that door. I've made jokes about taking my tent and camping outside of the Archbishop's office in sackcloth and ashes and weeping and wailing, and I am fully capable of whining as much as I need to. But I don't know. So I can't promise you that. But I can reassure you that they take it seriously, and they've been very generous in really taking it seriously. So I don't know if that's the reassurance that we would like. It's not the reassurance I would like, but it is some reassurance that they're not just brushing us off, and that there is some realization that we need to do right by us for a number of reasons, because it's not fair to the people of God, it's not fair to our parish communities, it's not fair to individual Catholics. It needs to be done. So we'll see.
I don't think that they should be surprised at realizing that we feel that way over here. Because we have, like if you're not on the I-5 corridor, you're kind of in.
Are you really important? Yeah, that's a reasonable question, and one that I've felt even before I was a priest, because I was at a parish that was not on the I-5 corridor. I'm like, oh, cool. Yes.
I guess my question is for Jason. So what is Seattle going to do to change the perception?
Well, I mean,
because I'm like, that's a great word to use, but it doesn't mean anything.
Well, I think part of where you see some of the change too is actually in, like, say, our assignments when they created us as liaisons, right? Is they very well could have, and they actually, I think they tried to, but is combine essentially all the southern and western rural areas into one liaison. Oh, that's plenty good for that number of people, right? And they quickly realized, well, actually, no, it's not. So where.
But I mean, from the parish side,
right?
Because frankly, you don't matter to parishioners.
Right. Well, yeah.
I mean, you meet with the PAA, you meet with Father, and you come to these, but you're not.
You matter.
Father will vouch for me. I always insert my foot into
right. But that the parishioners, right, that they know that they matter to Seattle, right? That's kind of what you're talking about. Well, I think some of the big things too is again, it's not just with the liaison assignments, but also with things like, another good example of somebody who comes out here or tries to come out to the Olympics Peninsula as much as possible, like Father Justin Ryan for vocations. And one of the things he's talked about is it's very important for me to go out to these rural areas so they know, right, that vocations, not just the vocations of the churches in the urban areas matter, but out here, right, all the kids out here matter, and me coming out and talking to them. And so he's very happy to come out and talk. I think they're going to schedule him over in
He came out and did a vocation talk.
And at Shelton.
Pull the hours out here.
So,
Jason, I'm going to interrupt you too, because it occurs to me to also say the fact that you come out here, that you drive all around, because this guy lives in Bremerton, but he has parish assignments as far as, I believe, Vancouver and south, and for a brief time across the water as well. And you have been at almost every single Parish Family Town Hall meeting.
And another example is another department is our ministry outreach ministry folks, right? So pastoral outreach ministry, Joe Cotton.
Yeah.
So Joe is another one that is glad to come out if he gets scheduled from the parish, right, to come out and talk about helping start ministries to reach out to people at the margins and things like mental health ministry is one of the things that he's been working on too. Is like how do we at different parishes, whether they're rural or urban, how do we get them when we have volunteers who want to start? Like, say, I would love to help, with mental health crisis and ministry and things like that. Whether who knows what that means. Whether it's addiction, suicide, those kind of things. Right? I'd love to be able to have a ministry started, but I don't know how. He's one that would love to come out into these places and give those kinds of talks.
So they're going to wait for us to ask.
So, right, well, no, not necessarily, but they are getting people who are asking, right? And it's up to us to also say, hey, guys, if you guys want to have this done, go ahead, send him an email, set up a phone call, that kind of stuff, and have him come out. CCS is another organization. They have been telling all of us too they would love to work more out in some of the rural areas, and I know they're working very hard with like Father Michael Barbarossa with some programs and everything on Grace Harbor. So it's another thing too that they want to be out here as well. So it's one of those things too is that we, as out here on the peninsula, as I'm as well, right, living in Kitsap, have to be also engage them and say, hey, come out to see us. But in the past, they a lot of times didn't make the time. They're like, well, we're busy. There's not a lot. Now they're like, please, we would love to come out. Just let us know when you would like us, and just give us a call and that kind of stuff. So there are those people who are willing to come out or send their teams out to do those things. Another good example is when we have things like regional trainings, for example. I've lobbied quite hard a lot of times to get them over here, and so that's why we have things like some trainings and everything that happen. Usually, because of logistics, they end up happening a lot at St. Olaf and Polsville. Okay. But there's a lot more of regional trainings for ministry staff, for staff or ministry volunteers, that kind of stuff, that are happening a lot of times at Polsville, because again, that's one of my jobs, is lobbying for things for my region, right? Saying, hey, we really need things here. We need services here. We need people to come out. We need people to, to engage with people out here. So that's, again, it's one of my things that I do. So if you have ideas, right, you would like to have somebody like who, you've had volunteers or people who want to volunteer who have asked about, hey, how do I get, like a food distribution ministry started or something like that. Those are the kind of things you can ask me. And I'd be glad to get those teams together to try to help those folks out in knowing how to start those kinds of ministries. Because that's all, obviously, the volunteers are going to be ones out here running them, managing them, those kind of things. But we do have resources to help them get started.
One of the things, and you know about this because we've talked about it in the office, but one of the things that we are doing, it hit me during Priest Days. Do you guys all know what Priest Days is? The annual sort of priest convocation that happens every year down in Ocean Shores. The Office of Vicar for Clergy puts it on. It is mostly hosted by different organizations that sponsor different events. And we have speakers that come in every year and give 3 talks over Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We used to go through Thursday, but now we end on Wednesday evening. There are different events, so there's masses, there's prayer, there's confessions, there's prayers for the dead for all the priests who have died. There's one event. There's a jubilary and sort of big dinner on the last night, a banquet. There's also like social events. So they have a bowling tournament, a golf tournament, an Arizona horseshoe tournament, ping pong. Guys bring board games. They have different vendors who show up. And yeah, it's really fun. It's a great time. And the OVC, the Office of Vicar for Clergy, is a staff of, I want to say, 13 people. It's not that many people in the in Chancery. Chancery is a lot smaller than you think it is, even though we often think of the Archdiocese of Seattle. The Archdiocese of Seattle is everybody in the Archdiocese. The Chancery is the bishop's staff. They have different offices. The Office of Vicar for Clergy is the office that when you call to ask a question, maybe offer a complaint, maybe offer a suggestion, maybe ask for information, the OVC is the first office that gets routed to every single time. If you call, you can almost guarantee you're going to talk to Michelle Green, Gianna Gustavo, or Kathleen, whose last name I can't pronounce right now, but you're going to talk to one of those 3. And so I went over to one of them, and I was half joking, if I'm really honest. And I said, gosh, it really feels like you guys should have an OVC Days, like just some time where you guys just get treated the way you're treating all of these priests, because this is a really amazing spread. It'd be really nice if, we should probably talk about something. And I kind of said it halfway, like, I don't know how I could make, how we could make that happen, but I feel like we should do some, particularly we priests. And, we get a barbecue once a year in the afternoon at Conley House. And I'm like, oh yeah, you get a barbecue during a work day in downtown Seattle. That sounds super relaxing, whatnot. So I wasn't real impressed by that. And I would say about 45 minutes later, actually while I was playing board games with a bunch of other guys, one of the ladies from that same office, they had a little desk, she came over and she goes, Father, the Olympic Peninsula is really nice. And I was like, that's an interesting idea. And I sat there and we brainstormed for probably the next day or so about hosting here on the Olympic Peninsula the entire OVC staff. I thought, and I did a little bit of back of the napkin calculations. It would probably cost about $10,000 to pay for meals for a day and a half, to put them up in hotels, to maybe give gift cards or comp, a dinner over at Downriggers, to have a speaker come out and talk, to have them just have a day here in the area that we sponsor as a parish family. So on your behalf, I made that offer to the OVC. I did it. I made the offer, and they jumped all over, and they said, we'll pay for it. And I said, they did, honest to God, like, we'll make a budget for that. I'm like, well, I'd like us to have some skin in the game. You guys are getting a bit of advance notice of this happening. It's already scheduled. It's going to happen in November. They don't know this. I'm putting it on here. It's going to go on YouTube. I hope they don't listen to it. I have gotten all the names of all the staff members. I will be sending it to the school and asking every class in the school to pick a staff member from OVC. I will be asking every parish group to take a name. I'm probably just going to assign and say, hey, I've got this name. Would St. Vincent de Paul pray for this group? I'm going to ask every group and every class and every parish to have a staff member they pray for. And at the end of a month, pray for them. write a card, and every member of that group, or every member of that class, sign a card. We're going to have gift baskets of some sort for each staff member of some sort, ready for each staff member. I don't know if I can manage getting into their hotel room, because I don't know if the hotels are going to let us do that. But basically, it's come up. One of our staff members has agreed to host a barbecue the first night they're here at their house on their property. We have a big old barbecue the first night. They're going to stay overnight at some hotels somewhere. We have to pick nice ones. One of the locals told me, don't go to that hotel, it's bad. See, if you want to impress them, send them to the right hotel. And I appreciate the warning, believe me. Yeah, they know who they are, and I'm glad for it. And we're going to have them up here. And when it's not, and they said, well, we could meet your parishioner. I said, no, we don't want this to be a work day where you're actually going out and making yourself available, because you're going to get good and bad and whatnot. We're going to have just one person. I'm probably going to invite another priest to come and give a talk. They're going to have mass here. They're going to meet with our staff. And we're probably going to invite, I say this probably because it isn't quite settled yet, probably going to invite parishioners to pray with them, but not make it like an open forum of like, hey, come talk to the OVC, because then it becomes less of a vacation and more of a, let's hear all the things you're upset about or excited about, but let's be real, it's going to be a lot of, as long as I've got you, let me give you my gripes. And I had a couple of purposes of doing this. The very first purpose, obviously, was just, we ought to do something for our chancery staff. I don't know that people realize how overworked these folks are. 12 people in an office who get all of the calls from every parish in the Archdiocese. And I mean that sincerely. 12 people in an office who get every parishioner who's upset about a mass change, or angry that the music doesn't match what they want, or worried that some creepy person showed up at the church and Father doesn't seem to take it seriously, or upset that maybe something's going to happen that is real or not real. They call that office. They also are the ones who, help give information and whatnot. They also get happy calls and whatnot, but that's 12 people who are on the front line. Want to do something nice for them. But that's not all I wanted to do, because I am a little bit of a conniving priest. I also wanted them to know that there is life on the Olympic Peninsula. And there's no other group of parishes that's even thinking of this. They told me that no one had ever thought of this before. And I didn't either, guys. It was one of their own who suggested to me, and I ran with it. No one else has suggested doing anything. They said, even if you never do it, the very fact that you'd be willing to do it is really nice. And I'm like, well, crap, now I feel like you're an abused wife. And I don't need to do something nice for you or whatnot. So that they know that, hey, we're not a bunch of resentful people out there. We would do nice things if you would let us. But the third thing is the idea that we are one with the Chancery and that they are one with us. And it's implicit both ways. That we are, and this is why I want to involve parish group in classes of like, we're going to pray for these people we've never met, but who do so much for us. And they're going to receive from us cards. They're going to receive gift baskets. And even if you didn't agree with the decision and maybe you're going to go home and go, I don't think this is a good idea. Too late, you already donated to the parish and I'm spending your money on it. You paid for this. You helped make this happen. Whatever they allow us to spend on them. They're going to hear and see that, hey, we are one. And I'm going to broadcast this to the communities. I haven't told a lot of people, but you kind of brought it up, so here you are. I'm going to broadcast this, hey, we are also connecting with them and they're connecting from us. And I'm not doing it because I want to get it in with the diocese or, this is a way to get a promotion or this is to get favorable treatment. But I am willing to bet you, not a lot of money because I don't have a lot, that they go back to the Chancery and go, hey, that's my timer, sorry. Please turn off. We were on the Olympic Peninsula and we were treated really well. And there's something going on there. And they look at it differently and they tell different people. And I have to admit to you, I have this grand hope that maybe other groups of parishes go, we want in on doing that, whether it's with the OVC or another office. And wouldn't it be an amazing thing if every area of the diocese adopted an office or said, we are willing to lead an event to have a group of the Chancery come out here once a year and do a retreat. And we're interacting with them and they're interacting with us. What if they stayed 2 days and one day was a retreat and one day was an actual sounding off or having things or whatnot? We were interacting and we built a culture, exactly what you're talking about, of, hey, we're not nothing here on the Olympic Peninsula. And also, they're regular human beings too. They're not just people in an ivory tower. Maybe some of them think that way, but I'd actually be willing to bet most of them would quickly be revealed to not actually think that way.
The ones I've met since I've
and I
staff are very
no,
nice.
And I'm not saying you think that, but I will acknowledge I've met some of the ivory tower dwellers and thought, we need to chip away this ivory tower. But I've also met some where I'm like, man, these are regular parishioners who just saw an opportunity to serve. So this is one way that we can, and I'm hoping to gin up, I would love for you to gin up enthusiasm too if you think that it's a good idea, but to gin up that connection and that enthusiasm, because we really do. It's the same effort of the parish family. we are always going to have our individual identity. That's just not going away because that's human, right? I came from an individual family. Even if I had gotten married, I wouldn't lose my family history. But we're in a marriage. It's an arranged marriage, and we need to build into that. And the fact of the matter is we are an archdiocese, and finding ways to tangibly connect with those that we can. We can't possibly connect with everybody. That's humanly impossible. But how could we overcome some of that us versus them thing, whether it's us and them in Sequim and Port Angeles or us and them of Olympic Peninsula and Seattle? I think there's some things we could do. And this one, frankly, a lot of people got enthusiastic about it, so I think it's going to work pretty well. But I'll be curious. I'll see how it turns out. Maybe we do it again. Maybe we go, this was a really big mistake. I don't think it's a big mistake, but we'll see how it goes. I think it's going to be fun. I'm excited about it. But clearly I'm excited about it because here I am talking about it. So
Well, I think the same idea could be applied to getting the five to know each other better. Like this is the month that everybody goes to St. Mary's and celebrates St. Mary's, and this is the time everybody comes to swim and does that. And each of us, get the four get invited to the one, and the one can show the four who they are, what they're all about and stuff, and then
there's opportunities there.
I've been to Forks once, and I've been to the one in Clallam Bay one time. Both times the buildings were closed, so I couldn't go in. But I don't know anything about them.
Well, and this is part of it too. You made a comment.
We could have like a pilgrimage within.
Well, and you're absolutely right. And you kind of put your finger on it. I know you put your finger. You express something that is true. Oh, you're waiting for us to do a thing, and that's a fair frustration of like it shouldn't all be on us. We should be doing it mutually. But it also mutually does mean, like you're saying, I do have to take some initiative to go. All right, I'm going to go to Sunday Mass somewhere else every now and then, and we will need to explore opportunities of. For instance, I didn't know that St. Mary's had a cemetery when I got here. Like, I didn't know it for several months. And then, well, there were some problems at the cemetery. We had to go out and visit it, and John Nolan, our PA here, happened to be in Port Townsend, went out there and like, this is a beautiful property. We should have a parish picnic here. I don't mean the whole parish family, but we should do something here and invite other people to do that. I don't know what other neat events might happen or how we do it. And I think this will be something that our Super Council, our Parish Family Advisory Council, if not immediately, we'll be ruminating on, and God willing, we get our councils, our local groups up, be ruminating on as well. A lot of this first year has really been just stabilizing and figuring out our framework, and I realize that is a bit of an excuse, it is, but it's also the reality. But these kinds of things, I don't think have to be just one group doing all the work or all of the sacrifice, but all of us going, okay, what might we do? Even if it's a one-off, even if this thing with the OVC is a one-off thing, totally worth doing. And maybe we never do it again, but we go, okay, that was really cool. What other thing could we do? And I think I've used this phrase at Parish Family Town Hall meetings before. I'm all about throwing the spaghetti at the wall. If 3 people are willing to try a thing and lead through it and whatnot, provided it fits within the general vision of the church and it's consistent with our mission and our teaching, take that spaghetti and throw it. If it sticks and it works and it's fruitful, we'll clean up the wall, but we'll keep doing it. Like, we'll make it go on. But I certainly can't do it all alone. So if you guys have ideas or you want to get people together, I think part of it too is talking to other parishioners and going, let's do something. Even if it's something that isn't faith formation or isn't a particular program, let's see something we can do that's fun for us, because if it's fun for you, there's going to be other people that it's fun for. I've told this story at other places. I don't know if I've told it here. I had a young lady at my last parish who was 20-something and lonely. She just didn't have any friends, or it felt like she didn't have any friends. She actually did, but she didn't feel like she had any friends. And she came to me one day and said, I'd like to start a young adult group. I'd like to do a board game night once a month on Saturdays, and I've got a couple people who are willing to do it. Would you support it? Great. Here's your keys. Here's your limits. Make it happen. She started a young adult group. She ended up leading, she was in the parish council. I think she's still on the parish council. She was in the choir. She got up at one point to sort of give an appeal about volunteering. And by then, it was a year or so later, people kind of knew who she was. And she goes, I didn't do this for the parish. I didn't do this for the good of the community. I did this because I wanted friends. And that was the motivation that drove me. And honest to God, that's probably a good holy motivation right there. We often think if I got to do something that fills a particular need of the parish or fills a particular role in the parish, your needs are the roles of the parish or the needs of the parish. And if you could find a group of people who are willing to work with you in that, and again, fits within the mission of the parish, it's consistent with our vision and our teachings of the church, more power to you. Make it happen. Off to the homily again. Sorry about that. It's past 8 o'clock. I'm happy to stick around. Are there any follow-up questions to all these things or any of these things? Maybe we close after those and then If you want to stick around, we can informally keep going. All right. Thank you, guys. I am always grateful for you guys showing up. I wasn't sure anyone was going to show up on a Friday in August, especially towards the end. Why don't we pray? I don't know any of the prayers of the Holy Spirit by heart. Why don't we just pray the Our Father and call that good? In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.